Hi, this is Shauna. Thanks for joining me today. This is a video on the basic shapes used in quilling. And everything that we're doing today is based on a coil. At the end, I will give you some bonus shapes using the same tool that we create the coil with, but doing some different variations. So to get started, what we do is we choose our paper. And the paper comes in strips, unless you've cut your own and they're not stuck on each end like this one is. But you just tear it off like old notebooks have, and make sure you don't have any of that glue on the end of your paper. I have two different types of winders. This one is a battery operated one, and I'm going to use it during part of this, and then during the other part I'll show you about using the manual one. It has a slit in the end here that your paper slides in, and you do have to have kind of good eyesight to do it. You pull that right down to the end, so it's nothing sticking out the end, and then you just push the button and it coils it very quickly. To get it off, I just pinch it and pull it off. And this is a tight coil. So you can see it's wound tight. There's no air holes in there. To make it adhere, just pull that little flap out, get your glue and apply a very small amount to the end. And then you just fold it over on itself and hold it for a couple seconds so that that can adhere and dry. So here is your tight coil. Next, we're going to make a loose coil. And to do that, you start with the same tight coil, put it in there, wind it up, pinch it, pull it off. And then in the previous video, I showed you a ruler that has circles in it of different diameters. If you're trying to create something that has all the same size, at first it's good to use that ruler because it keeps them all uniform. Once you get going, you'll probably get a feel for it and be able to just do it in your fingers. I'm going to show you how I do that because I've gotten where I don't really use that ruler as often. So I just start opening my fingers slightly until I see the size coil that I want. I'll do this one fairly large so you can see the air pockets in between there. Same way of closing it up, you just pull the tail out, a little glue, fold it back on itself, and just hold it there for a second so it has time to let that glue adhere. There's a round coil. The next one that we're going to do is called a marquise. And these are all based off of this loose coil. So for the marquise, you can make them a little fatter like this or a little skinnier like this. They work depending on the size of project that you're working on. They can be eyes, they can be leaves, they can be filler. They're just kind of a cool shape to fit in corners and things like that. So to make that marquise, I always take where my tip is, where I glued it, the end is, and I always make that one of the corners. So for the marquise, you would pinch it in the corner, and then I come on the other opposite end and pinch that. And we'll make this one a fat one. So you kind of just manipulate that circle until you get that where you want it. So say that's the size I want it. To glue it down, what I would do is I would take my flat surface that I put glue on, and I'll show you, Elmer's glue works really well. I use an old credit card because the glue will dry on there and you can wipe it off when you're all done and reuse it. So it makes a nice reusable area. I take my tweezers. In this case, I have the ones that are shaped with the bend in them, so it makes it easy to get a hold of. And I decide where I want that eye to stay. So let's say I want the eye to move to the side. I would just manipulate that over until I get that circle moved over to the side where I want it, and I pinch it like this. And then you can take your glue and you just set it in the glue. And you'll see on the back side that put glue in several places. So then when you're ready to put it on your paper, you just set it down on there. I'm just going to lay this on here to show you. Put it in place and hold it in place where you want it. And then it stays. If you want to move any of that, like you don't like it, say I want the eye further over, at this point I can hold on to one side and move it over where I want it, and again hold it until it's adhered, and it only takes a couple of seconds. And see that eye stayed in place. But like I said, you can manipulate that wherever you want that centerpiece. If you decided you want it in the center, you can hold on to it and manipulate that back to the center, hold it in place again, and it stays in the center. The next one we're going to do, let me go back to that really quick. If you decide you wanted it narrower before you put glue on it, just squeeze it even more and it will narrow out. So that way you could have a narrower marquee. I'm not going to show you how to glue every one of these down because it's the same tactic for each one of them. The next one we're going to make is we'll make another coil, and we're going to work on the square and the rectangles. We'll pick a bright color here so that hopefully you can see it really well. Use our coiler. This one I got on Amazon. There's all different types of them. So you just have to kind of pick something that you like and in your price range. Again, we're going to let that coil loose. I'm going to let this one be quite large just so that you can see how to make a square easier in the camera. And we'll go back that big. I'm just folding that around to get the size I want. We're going to glue it. And again, just hold it for a second. And then in the squares, I again like to put that in the corner. I just feel like it makes it look cleaner. So I'm going to pinch that first corner. And don't worry about this little piece hanging out. We'll take care of that at the end. And then what I typically do is I go to the opposite end, almost like I'm making a marquee again, and pinch this corner. So now that gives me two corners. And then I turn it this way, and I just feel my way down till it's about half. I feel like it's halfway, and I pinch in a corner. And I come on this side and pinch in a corner. And then you just have to manipulate it until you feel like that you've gotten it as squares that you want it. You can work with the inside ones if you want. I usually don't worry too much about the insides. I'm just trying to get that outside look. But if you want these separated more, you can use your tweezers and come in, and you can create bends on the inside corners. It's just how square do you want for the piece that you're doing. And then with this little piece that's sticking off here, I don't want that to be there. I just take my little scissors and I just nip that off. And then I'll just manipulate it and play with it until I get the square that I want and how I want it to look. And then again, to glue it, I would use the tweezers, and I usually grab 2 or 3 layers of that, dunk it in my glue, set it where I want it, and then you can play with it once it's on the paper. You have a few seconds to play with it. Get it where you want it, and if you want your circle on one side, the center on one side, anything like that, you can just play with it and get it to move where you want it. The rectangle is made very similarly. I can't say that word today, sorry. And we'll start with a coil. We are going to make it the size that we want. We'll go about there. Get our glue. Glue that end down. Now with a rectangle, obviously it's not, all sides aren't equal, and you're going to have shorter sides and longer sides. So what I do is I start with my first bend on this end, and then I decide how long I want it. So we're going to say that long. So now you can see I have 2 bends on this end. squeeze the center to make it long, and then I just use my fingernails and estimate where I need to be putting those bends in this end, and then again manipulate it until you get the ends where you want them. And don't worry about it if you have to bend, several times. The paper will take shape and it'll help you. You just got to practice them and figure out how to use your fingers, your fingernails. If you need a tool to use, you just need to work with it until you get it where you want it. See, I got this side a little more narrow than the other end. I'm going to come in and change where my pinch point is there a little bit because I like that wider end. And the paper will just take the new shape. So see, that's a little bit better. That gives you a rectangle. And this is a case of, practice makes perfect. So just, a lot of people will do these and then you can put them in a Ziploc bag and save them for a project later or something like that. But if you just sit and practice on these shapes, you'll get where you can make them really fast and perfect like you want them to look in your piece. The next one we're going to work on is a triangle. So we have our coil. I'm going to release it a little bit. We have our open coil. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that up just a tiny bit by pulling on it, and you just follow that around and wrap it. Again, we'll glue the tail here. Keeping that end of that tail as one of your corners again, I'm going to pinch that together to create a corner for the triangle. Then I'm going to follow down the sides, and at equal points, I just place my fingers like that, push up with my thumbs, down with my fingers, and it creates a three-sided. And if you want it to be, like this one has a little rounding here, you don't want that. You just would push in on it a little bit. So it's just manipulating the paper to get it where you want it. For placing it in the glue, I get it with my tweezers. I would set it down in the glue and then glue it to whatever project I was doing. This one, you can see these two. One's got more straight sides, one's got a little bit more round. It just depends on your project and what space you're needing to fill, what you need that triangle to look like. So you just manipulate it. The next one is a diamond, which is really similar to the square. So I'm just going to take the square and we're going to turn it on end. The difference with the diamond and the square is, although they're all still the same size, the diamond is just pushed up a little bit. So if you just push that up, there you have a diamond. For the wave, this is what the wave looks like. So one end sticks up a little bit, one end sticks down a little bit. I take that end of the piece of paper that's sticking there, and that's going to be one corner. And we make a marquee out of it. And then to create the wave, we're going to push down on the top left and up on the bottom right. So we just do that with our fingers here. You just start pushing it and manipulating it. I get a hold of that, and then I do the push down on this side. So there's my wave. I'm going to skip down here and show you this one. This is a slug. The only difference between a slug and a wave is how open it is, the way it looks. I'll show you the two together. So you can see the wave is more open, the slug is more compressed. So the way you do that is just by manipulating it a little more, pinching that center down so that it closes that. And then you have one end up, one end down. So when you lay it down, it looks like a little slug, crawling across the ground. But that's the only difference between a slug and a wave, is how open it is. So there's our slug. I'll place these on here real quick. Diamonds, our triangles. There's our tight coil, our rectangle, and we have a marquise, which was right here. The next one is a teardrop, and the teardrop you can do multiple things with. It starts again with a coil. Let's make our coil. We're going to open that up. And, okay, glue the end. A teardrop or a raindrop, they both start by pinching that top where that's sealed together there. And if you don't do anything else to it, right there you have a teardrop or a raindrop. They're called both things. So you can see that looks just like this, except you can also use it. It doesn't have to face that way. It can face upside down. So on this example, I placed that one upside down, and it's quite a bit larger. But that's a teardrop. With the teardrops, you can also manipulate them into varying degrees of the curve. And at the end, the most bent one looks like a paisley. So we'll start with this little bit of a bend so that you can see that. And you just do that by placing your fingers and starting to pinch it. You just start to bend it. When you go to glue that, the way I do it is I get a hold of it like this. I put it in my glue, place it on my paper, and then I use my fingers to hold it the shape that you want it to be, whatever degree of bending you want. I hold that in place until it's dry. These will pop back out. They're like springy. So I use my tweezers and I just kind of give it the pressure there on the side until it's dry and it holds in place. So the more you bend it, the more spring it's going to have. So you can see there's more of a degree of bend. And to hold it in place, I would do the same thing. You get a hold of it, put it in your glue, put it on your paper, and I just hold it with my fingers. I use my tweezers, and I just push that in to the point that I want it to stay. Once it's dry, it will stay there. And then the same one, if you kind of round this edge out a little bit more and you bend this tip down, and I just use my fingernails to do this. If you don't have fingernails, use your tweezers. But see how I've got that tip bent down there? Now to round this out, I just push on it. And you will get that to round out a little more. And that creates a little paisley. Same thing when you go to glue it. It's springy and it's going to lose its shape. So I hold it with the tweezers. I place it on my paper, put my fingers on it, and I adjust where I need to make sure I get all my points where I want them. And you just hold it in place until it adheres to the paper. Once it has, it'll hold that shape. If you let go too early and don't have any supporting other coils or anything around it, it can lose its shape. So you may have to hold it for a second to make sure it's actually adhered and maintains that paisley shape. So that's that. The next one we'll do is a crescent shape. We'll start with our coiler. Allow that coil to open up a little bit. Glue the end down. Now, a crescent shape, think, of like a quarter moon or like that. So the top where that glue is going to be this top corner or bottom corner, whichever way you want. And we're going to leave this radius of the circle on this side, but we're going to just push in the center of this side to create it. So I give a slight pinch up here, I give a slight pinch down at the bottom, equal away. So basically you're creating a marquee. It's just like the marquee that we had up here right now. And then we're going to take and push in one side of it. And I just use my thumbnail and I just work that around. And you don't want to have any hard shapes in it. You want it, to look natural. So you're not trying to put bends in it or anything. But there's your crescent. And again, when you go to glue it, move things around where you want them and get a hold of it. Put it in your glue, press it down where you want it. I just kind of hold it like that. I make sure my eye's where I want it. You can put your finger on it. And then I use my tweezers to just push that back to where I had it, so that when you let up on it and the glue is dried, it holds that crescent shape. So that's our crescent. For the arrow, you start by making a triangle. So we have our triangle here. And we're going to leave the one end alone because it's pointed. All we're going to do is make a harder crease in the center up here at the top. So I find middle with my fingernail, and you just push down and it begins to fold in, and I just fold it on itself like that. And then you can adjust your arrow to fit where you need it. This one's a pretty tight arrow. I'll show you it compared to the one on the sheet. That you just shape it how you need it for your project. The next one that we're going to show you is an oval. And we can do that with a loose foil again. Get a piece of paper. Okay, we're going to open that up. And an oval, you can do a couple different shapes. We have where you can do a true oval, or you can do an egg. So the true oval, I glue that end down, and I just use my fingers to kind of start pressing in on the sides a little bit and start getting that to hold the shape I want. And you just manipulate it until you get the shape that you want. So there's an oval. Then if you want to do an egg shape, you've already got a radius here. All you're wanting to do is make that a little bit smaller radius at the top. So I just start manipulating that. I don't want to hard pinch in it because I'm not looking for, a hard corner there. So I pinch it, but then I kind of push back down on it, and I just keep playing with it until I get that egg shape that I'm looking for. So it's not quite a teardrop, and it's not truly oval. It's more egg shaped, like that. Another thing that you can do with the coils is to create a tulip. I'll show you that. And these shapes, like the tulips and the arrows and all those things, they don't have to face the way I'm showing them. Depending on the pattern that you're trying to fill, they can face any different way. So the tulip may fit better in your pattern down in a corner, upside down or sideways. Any of these shapes, you're just using them to fill space. So they can face whichever way you want them to face. We're going to glue that end down. And ideally what I'm going to try to do on this one is I'm going to try to make the corner where my tail is so that it looks finished. So in this case, I'm going to pull it this way. I'm just going to look at it on this circle about halfway. I'm going to pinch it. I'm going to pinch it. So basically you have a marquee, right? Like this. And now to make this shape, we're going to come up to the top and we're going to apply some pressure here and here. So by pinching down, I pinch that in between my fingers. That starts to create your tulip shape. Then I just work the corners so that they come up and they make a nice hard corner there. and just manipulate it until I get the look of the tulip that I want. So like I was saying, you could have it this way. It might fit in a corner of what you're doing better that way. Upside down, whatever for your pattern that you need. But that piece is called a tulip. Okay, then we're going to do a curved square. And the curved square, so you start with your coil and then you're going to make a square, okay? Sorry, it takes a second to get that in that little hole for me. Okay, so we start with our coil, we let it loosen up the size we want, we glue the tip down. And then we're going to make a square. So pinch the corner, pinch the corner. Basically, we have our marquee. We're going to come back over, pinch the corners again. And there's our square. And now to do a curved square, you can do it to different degrees. So you can see on this one, this is still a square, but these has little indents on each side. Or the more you pinch it, you can make it tighter and more like almost like a star kind of thing. So I use the tip here in my fingernail and I just start pushing in until I get that where I want it. So if I was going for, that small curve in there, you just play with it until you get the curves in where you want them. And I'd use my fingernails a lot for this. I just kind of run it on the paper, and just put some pressure on there and create my curved square. So if I that's all I needed, that's great. And you can turn it on end. It's a diamond, a curved diamond then. Or if you want it tighter like this one, you just really push equally in to the center. And then when you glue it down, get your tweezers, dip it in your glue, lay it down, and it's going to spring back out like this. So you get it where you want it. It's glued at this point. Squeeze it with your fingers and just hold it there on the paper until it's adhered to the paper. Once it's adhered, you let go, it'll keep its shape. Okay, so we didn't work on the heart yet. I'm going to show you heart using the coil, and then we're going to switch to our little bonus material, and I'll show you how to do a heart with the more using what we call scrolls. So let's get our coil, release that a little bit so we have some room to work here. Glue our end down. For hearts, I like to put the glued end at the tip of the arrow down here. And the heart is honestly a little hard to do for me even. I don't do them very often, so I don't practice them very often, but we're going to get our bottom, right? And then we come up here and estimate what's going to be the center of your heart. And if you want to make an off-centered one, that's totally fine. Just go off to the side, and then you're just going to manipulate it until it looks like a heart. I'm going to try to do this one in the center, but like I said, these are kind of hard for me because I don't do them very often. So you can see it's starting to take that heart shape. And then we're going to push down in the center, and we're going to start building the heart. Now what I've done is I've gotten hard corners here, and I don't have a hard corner here yet, so I want to get that hard corner in the center. And now I'm going to start working this out and pulling it back and manipulating it until it's round like a heart should be instead of triangular. And the paper will bend with you. You just have to just work it. And sometimes I don't get it quite perfect, so when I glue it, I manipulate it a little bit on the paper. I find that's easier to do. So by doing that, I would take this, I would put it in my glue, lay it down, and then most of it's, going to be adhered to the paper, I would just start manipulating this, where I want that, press down on it, manipulate that so that it's rounded again, and press down and hold it in place. Once the dry glue is dry, it will hold its shape for you. So that's a coiled heart. And you'll see here we have two other little hearts. These are done using the scroll method, and I'll show you that next. Plus, I'm going to show you these little scrolls here. These are wonderful for filling spaces, small spaces, making it look dainty. And there's different kinds. So I'm going to get me a little piece of paper here. And now we're going to switch over to using the manual. The way it works is you hold it in your fingers or palm, depending on how you want to hold it. But this has little grooves in it so you can get a hold of it, and it moves separate from the handle. So you can learn to turn it like this, or learn to turn it counterclockwise or clockwise, either way. For these little hearts, you just pre-cut your paper. I'm just going to cut off a little chunk here. This first one has big scrolls and kind of an open area in the top. So what we do is we take our paper, fold it in half. That's going to give us the bottom point. And then we're going to do these going inward on both sides. So we get our paper in our scroller, our coiler, and we wind it toward ourselves. And we'll go about there. I let go. It's going to unwind a little bit. Go do the other side, and we try to match how far down we go to the side that we already completed so that they're matching. This one I've had for a very long time, and it gets tight sometimes, and I have to take a little needle and pull those apart again because I get them too tight and you can't get a paper to slide in. So I'm going to go a little further down than the other one because remember it's going to unwind a little bit. Push it off. And then we're going to start to unfold these a little bit. I have this little tool I like to use to do that. I hold it in place. And I kind of just start using that tool to manipulate it, to open it up where you want it. Just uncoiling it a little bit so that it's not so tight. You can see how it's starting to take shape. At this point, I would try to make sure that they're about the same distance apart. I would then take my glue, drop it in your glue. I'll show you this one on my mat. You can see it got a little bit of glue on there. We're going to hold it in place. And then I just kind of start manipulating it where I want it. When I think that I got it where I want it, I just hold both sides down. Just light pressure. You're not trying to bend the paper or anything. You're just making sure it's in contact with the surface you're gluing it to. And then it will hold its shape. That's that one. I'm going to use this same one again and show you how to do it if you want them to touch instead of being open at the top. So in that case, I use my tweezers and I just unroll them a little more so that the ends are curved in like that. They don't really have the scroll in there anymore. And then I just use the glue and I hold them in place until they're adhered to the surface. And again, you just manipulate them. Just move them where you need them to be. The glue will hold them in place. And you just would hold your fingers on there for a second. When you're gluing it to your paper, it would be adhered, and then you would keep your heart shape. Something I do a lot of are these little scrolls right here. There's a couple different ways to do them. So this one is an inline scroll. This one is using a back and forth method. So I'll start by showing you this S scroll and the C scroll. So the S scroll looks like an S, and the C, if I had glued it correctly on here so you could see that, looks like a C. You can see it looks like a C. So I'm going to show you those two techniques, and then from there, I'll show you how to do some of the fancier connected scrolls. So I'm just going to cut myself a piece off here to play with. You can do it on whole lengths. You don't have to, though, if you're just trying to fill a small space. So let's start with the S. So the S, you see this scroll is going clockwise, and this scroll is going the opposite way. So we're going to put this on the end, just like we start with the coils. And I'm going to push away from myself to get the first one. So I'm going to scroll away from myself. And we're going to go about halfway down. And then you just pull it off. Now I'm going to come down to this end. So that scroll is facing down. I haven't changed anything. I'm going to put this back on this end. And I'm going to scroll again away from myself. So that scroll is on top of the paper, and the other scroll looks like it's under the paper, if that makes sense. So see how this one's facing up, this one's facing down. When you turn it on its side, it looks like an S. For the C, one's turned in this way and the opposite end is turned in this way. So on this one, we're going to turn both of them on top of the paper. So we get our coil maker on there, pull it to the end, and I'm going to twirl toward myself, keeping that coil on top of the paper. We'll go about halfway. We're going to pull it off. We're not going to move the paper at all. Just move your fingers down, put your coiler back on this end, go to the end and coil toward the previous coil, still on top of the paper. Once they're together, you let go. It unwinds a little bit, turn it on its side, and it looks like a C. You don't have to place this in your project exactly like this. You can place them upside down, backwards. It doesn't matter. It's just filling space. But that's a C coil. Okay, now I'm going to teach you a little variation on, we're going to do this V coil. I'm going to use my heart that we cut out already because it's already shaped like the V at the bottom. We have that already. And instead of going inwards like this is, we're going to go outward. So I'm going to take my coiler, get a hold of the end, place it in the coiler, and I'm going to go toward myself. And we'll go down, we'll leave, about a 1/4 inch down there. Pull that off. You'll see that unwound. And now you have half your V. You're going to turn it over, grab that end again, and again we're going to coil toward ourselves. And we'll go down till we have a 1/4 inch so that they match. Release, and there's your V. And you can, put them together just depending on what you're making, what size you need, things like that. You can just manipulate it where you want it. To glue it down, grab it with your tweezers, put it in your glue, and just glue it down. Hold it in place just like everything else so that it holds its shape that you want. Now, we're going to take these techniques we've learned here, and we're going to, let me get a different color here. We're going to make some chains or connected scrolls. I'm going to cut this piece in half and we'll use for both different kinds so you can see. So let's do the continuous one. We start at the end, just like we did the other ones, and you pick one way. So for this case, I'm going to say I'm going to go away from myself. So I'm just going to twirl that under a few times. I'm going to release it. So I have that scroll there. I'm not turning the paper over or anything. I'm just showing you the scrolls on the end. I'm going to come down a little ways, maybe an inch, inch and a half. I'm going to insert that coiler there. And then again, I'm going to go away from myself. And you'll see it starts pulling from both sides. You go right up to that coil. And again, release it. Move down another inch and a half. Put your coiler on. Again, I'm only going to go away from myself. Start rolling, and it's pulling that paper from both sides, so it's rolling onto itself. And release. And to finish it off, I'm going to go to the end. Sorry, I live out in the country and it's fall, so we have flies. And then scroll away from myself again, or coil away from myself again. And pull it out and release. When you turn it on its side, you can see how they're connected. To glue that, I usually grab a hold of it somewhere in the middle. I push it down in my glue carefully. You want to make sure those coils don't come undone. And then glue it in place wherever you're wanting it. And you can manipulate it, hold it. If you want the ends to come up or back, wherever you want, you just glue it in place. Hold it there and it'll hold its shape. Okay, so now for this one, this is scrolling, curling it one way and then curling it the other way. So I'll show you that. Start at the end again. And I'm going to first go away from myself. So I'm making my first coil. Pull it out. Move down an inch and a half, inch, wherever, however long you want, however big you want it. And now, instead of going away from myself, I'm going to go toward myself. So this paper is going to fold back toward me, but I'm going to hold it down with my thumb so that they coil together. See how it pulls toward me? I'm just going to hold that down with my thumb, and I'm going to coil it until I reach that starting coil. Pull it out. Now I'm going to go down here another inch, put it back on, and this time, instead of going toward myself, I'm going to go away. So it just starts coiling back on itself. Then I'm going to come down here an inch, and I'm going to go the opposite way. And if you get this lucky and get it just right, this will coil onto itself and finish it out, and you won't have an end one. But it just depends on how tight you're making them and stuff like that. You may have to come back and put that last scroll in the end. I think this one's going to end up coiling onto itself and just finishing itself out without a coil on the end. I'm going to go back toward myself this time, opposite of what I did last time. And pull it out. What this gives you, as you can see, it has the connecting part here creates a line on top, and the connecting part here creates a line on the bottom. This kind of reminds me of like Roman or Greece architecture. Every time I do it, we're going to push it down in our glue, carefully pull it up, make sure the coils stay tight that way. And you can glue it down where you want. If you're wanting these to be in line, I start by holding that down, get that where I want it, and then I manipulate that up so that you can get them in a line. You do not have to glue them in a line though. I'll show you that in a second. And then if you have something sticking out like that that you don't like, you can always take your scissors and clip it down close. And get rid of that end. And then tuck your coil back in. Hold it in place and it will glue down like you want. So those are a couple more coils, and I'll show you here what that's good for. I'm going to pull these up off of here, and we're going to clean this up a tiny bit. So let's pretend we're trying to fill this square. Okay. What would be good to use these for? I'm going to show you how to make an outline with the paper, and then I'll show you how to use those to fill that area up and how pretty it can be. So I know that these are 1-inch squares. So to enclose one of those, we need 4 inches of paper. So I'm just going to cut me off a little 4-inch section here. And I'm just going to quickly do this so that you get an idea how to do it. I like to just hold my paper and get the ends in the glue. I'm just holding it on end and running it through the glue. If you need to, you can use your tweezers to get a hold of it. Just make sure you have glue everywhere. Okay. Now I'm just going to hold that on that line. And this is straight up and down. So this is going to create like a frame, say. And I'm just going to hold that there until it is adhered to the mat. And if you have trouble getting it to stand perfectly upright and it's not wanting to adhere to the mat or to your paper or whatever you're putting it on, tweezers help a lot. And I use tweezers to make my corners. So I want to come down this way next. So I'm going to put my tweezers right in the corner, and I'm using my finger up here for support, but I'm bending that. You can see I'm creating a bend in it. And something like this, you could pre-do it and then put it down on there. I'm going to use my tweezers again and create a bend right here. And you can see this is not sticking to the mat very well because the mat's designed to have things not stick to it. But we're just going to create a square here. And then we'll glue it down so that we have that. Another way that you can do it if you don't like doing it that way is you could run a very fine bead of glue on your line. And that's why I like this particular little glue thing I got on Amazon, because it's very fine. At the end of making your piece, you don't want to have to see the glue that's glued it down. Ideally, you won't see any glue in there at all. Okay, so that's good enough for what we're doing. We have a little box here. Just holding it for a second to make sure it kind of stays there. Again, it's on the mat, so it may pop up. And then let's make some coils here. Not coils, some scrolls. I'm going to do the back and forth scroll first to show you that. And I'm using a full length piece of paper, so it's going to give us a long one. I make my first scroll. That went forward. I'm going to do this one back toward me. Down a little bit, and this one's going to be forward. Next one's back toward me. And I'm telling this out loud because it's more to remind myself. This one's forward. One will be back toward me. We're going to go forward again. Back toward me. A lot of this I do by feel because I can't see that little hole very well. So I just feel when the paper goes in. And then this last one, we're going to go forward. Pull it to the end so we have a nice finished look. and just forward it. Okay, so at this point you have this little strand of these, and if you want to use it for filling this in, I just pop it down, grab my tweezers, carefully put glue on it, and I just start pushing this in and manipulating it. Wherever it feels like it wants to go, I just start pushing them in so that they're filling in that space, holding it in place. And what I like about these is you can fold them back on themselves. That's why I like the backward, forward one. It lends itself to filling in an area very nicely. See that? Let's go over here and we'll just grab some of this that we already made, put some glue on it. Let's just push that in there, fill in the space, hold it for a second so it stays where we put it. Let's grab a couple of these other ones that we made. Let's use this little sea guy here. And see how that almost fits in there, but not quite? If you're trying to finish out a section, just go in with your scissors, cut that off. You can pull it out of there, and then you can manipulate that one to get it down in that hole. And then say this one would be perfect right up here, like that. We have this guy here, and we can see he's going to be too big, so I'm going to go in and just kind of cut that off. Get me one that's good to work with. Gonna get a little glue on here. Elmer's school glue is what I use. It just works perfect and it dries clear. And it's inexpensive. You don't need expensive stuff to do this. And then you just, get your fingers in there, manipulate it where you want it. Tweezers work great. Kind of move it around. Push them in place. I have a hole here and a hole here I want to fill. And it's going to take very small ones. So I'm going to take the end of this one and chop that little thing off. Pick it up. Let's stick it right in here. Like that. And let's take the end off this little S one that we did. And we'll get some glue on it and we'll stick it in that last little hole. And if it doesn't fit, but it's close, you can kind of just, fold it around and twist it and get it in there where you want it. And it fills in that hole perfectly. Might be cool to have like a little pink one in here, so I can take that scroll that we already did and I can use my tweezers to hold the inside a little bit. Pull that a little tighter. Readjust. Get my little scroll right there. We can make that fit in that little hole right there. You don't want to crunch your paper, so be careful when you're doing it. Make sure they're all in there nice and laying flat. You don't want stuff sticking up out of there. And there you go. Now we've filled in the square using the scrolls. And that's a good, fast way to fill in bigger areas. And it, it makes it look a little fancy. So that's kind of a cool thing. I always save all of these little things like this because you never know when you're going to be doing something like that. It may not be exactly the right color, but at some point it might be the color that you need and you have it already made. Sometimes I make a lot of coils, the tight coils and the loose coils, and just keep them in a Ziploc bag, because if you have them already made and you're doing a project, you can just grab your coil and start creating a flower. So if you already had like this center coil done and you had a bunch of coils like this and you decided you were going to use like the marquise to make a flower with, if you already had them done, you can just grab them and do it. Let's make us a flower here just to kind of show you that you can make stuff with this. give ourselves a center coil, so we'll make it yellow. You can see how much faster the other one is than doing it manually, but I do use this one a lot just because I enjoy it. This one, when you do the coil, it's not as neat. You can see how there's different layers sticking up. I push it off, pinch it with my finger to make that coil all one level. You see that leveled off nicely. And then glue your end in. Just lay that down here. Oh, we'll save that one. Get it uncoiled. We'll hold that for a second longer. This one, we'll re-glue it so that it's just an open coil, and we'll use that for one of our leaves on the flower. I'll show you how that works. You can make these flowers either glued down, or you don't have to glue them down. You can just make them and have them. Let's glue this end down again. We'll go about that big. Now, if you were making a flower and you don't have a good grasp on getting all your coils the exact same size, I would go back to that ruler so that you made several of these in this same exact size. Let's just do a teardrop. So I'm just going to pinch that in, and that makes a teardrop. Now, if you were to take that and glue it down around this, get our glue out. Make sure you grab all that so that your coil doesn't, half of it doesn't stick in your glue. And say you use that for your flower, that's your center. You can start just gluing your petals down. Let's glue him down too so he's not moving around. That will be the center. And we'll just put a couple petals around here so you can get an idea how to build a flower. Let's open that coil up and try to get it about the same size that we had it before. We're about there. Again, if you're trying to be uniform, use that little ruler with the holes in it, or they have bigger boards that you can get that have multiple holes, so you don't have to stop and do one at a time. You can do several. When I pinched it, I didn't get it quite right. Not a big deal. We just clip that little piece sticking off there. Get some glue on it. And then you would come in here, and that would be your second one. And you can put a little dab of glue on the edge here so that it adheres to the petal next to it. Push it over in place. So there's the start of your flower. You would just continue on around. That would create a flower. You can also not put this piece in and just glue these around and then put that on top, and it creates a little bit more of a 3D effect, and it would cover these tips. So I'm going to unglue that real quick, and it would basically sit like that up on top of it, and that gives it just, you know, a little bit more of a 3D effect. Actually, if you turn this sideways a little bit, it almost looks like you got the start of like a bee or something. A butterfly, a bee. Turn that way a little bit. And let's manipulate this up so they kind of match. And then let's put your little dot in the center here. Look at that. You got like a little bee or a butterfly. So that's the basics shapes. The next video I'll do will be a little bit more advanced shapes, and then we're going to start working on projects. So in the comments below, let me know what kind of projects that you would like to learn to make, whether it be names with flowers all around them, or is there an animal, or what kind of projects would you like to see, and I'll start tackling those for further videos. Thank you guys all for joining me. I appreciate that today, and I really, really appreciate it when you like and share the videos. I'm just a small channel. I'm not trying to make money on it or anything like that, but it's a lot of fun to get to teach people how to do things. So I just appreciate you guys watching. Thanks.